Good morning, scholars. Today we're going to continue our way through Far Homeric Greek, looking at what Smythe has to say about similes and comparisons, and considering quite a few examples from Homer as to how the moods function and such. Okay, so reading Smythe 2481, hos, hos a te, as if, and hoshote, hoshopote, as when, are often used in poetry in similes and comparisons. A. The present and aorist indicative and subjunctive, the subjunctive usually without on, are regularly used. The optative occurs only with hose or hosete. The verb of the apodosis may sometimes be supplied from the main clause, and the sense may be satisfied in other cases by supplying as happens, as is the case, i.e., as happens when, as is the case when. But as early as Homer, the ellipse was probably unconscious, as it is in English, as if, as when. Hence, hos a, hos hote are scarcely to be distinguished from hos. And B, the tense of the main clause may be primary or secondary without influence on the construction. Okay, so that makes it a little simpler. Now, so first off, hoste is followed by the present indicative, less often the optative, or by the subjunctive. So in this example from Iliad, book 23, and as a father waileth when he burneth the bones of his son, so Achilles wailed as he burned the bones of his comrade. Okay, so as, so, hos, de pater, hu paidos, o duretai osteakaion, hos Achilles, et aroi o dureto, osteakairon. Now, hos is common in Homer with the subjunctive without on, depending on the verb of the introductory clause, which is usually past. So, from Iliad 10, and as a lion, coming on flocks without a shepherd, with evil purpose leaps upon them, so the son of Tydeus attacked the men of Thrace. So, hos de leon meloisen a sematoisen epelton, aigese e o eese, kakafrone on en oruse, hos men threikas andros, epoiketo Tydeus vios. The simile may begin with hos, or with a demonstrative hoi or tus, after which hoste is placed. So thus, in this example from Iliad 16, and they, like vultures with hooked talons and beaks, on lofty summit, loudly screaming, will fight. Even so, they rushed screaming against one another. So just like hook-taloned vultures will fight, even so, they rushed. So hoi doste aigupi oi, galup so nukes anku lo kela, petre ep hupele, megala klasdonte makontai, hos hoi ke klenontes, ep aleloisen urusan. So we see here in the second line, makontai, subjunctive. And always remember that the subjunctive is basically a weakened subjunctive. I mean, a weakened future, excuse me. So it's a weak form of the future. Okay, so likewise, after a subjunctive with hos or hoste, an independent indicative may follow. So this is a wonderful bit with using Lattimore's translation. Somewhat, I think I fooled around with it a little bit. And they, so you see hoide, and they, like wasps, quick bending in the middle, or as bees, will make their home on the side of the rocky way, and will not abandon the hollow house they have made, but stand up to men who come to destroy them, and fight for the sake of their children. So these, though they were only two, are unwilling to give back from the gates until they have killed their men or are taken. Okay, so this is a wonderful scene where, book 12, we'll get to it. But you see, in the Greek, you have the demonstrative hoide, and then you have hoste, and poiesontai, subjunctive, and then hos, demonstrative, hoi, guk, eleluse. So they, like wasps, will make their home. So those were unwilling, or are unwilling. We have a vivid present. Hos, hoi, guk, delose. Hos a, commonly hosete, in Homer is used rarely with the indicative and subjunctive, but more frequently with the optative. But very often it occurs, as in this example, without any finite verb. So, from Iliad 19, and his eyes flashed like gleaming fire. To de hoi ose, lampesten, hosete puros, selas. Literally, the two and the two to him eyes, they gleamed like the brightness of fire. To de hoi ose, lampeste, hosete, puros, selas. Likewise, another example without any finite verb, the soldiers followed as sheep follow after a ram. La oi hepont hos ete meta tilon espeto ke me la. So we see here we have the indicative in the hosete clause. And as Mike tells us, this is the only occurrence in Homer of the indicative in such a clause. Again, another example. And he loved me as a father loves his own son. This is from Iliad 9, and is the only occurrence of the subjunctive in such a clause. And he loved me as a father loves his own son. Kai me biles hos ete pater hon paida bilese. And yet another, but this time using the optative. And their feelings seemed to be as it would be if they had come to their own country of rocky Ithaca, where they were raised and born. Doke se dara sphisi dumos, hos emen, hos e patrit igoiato, kai polen autein, tregeis iterges, hina tetrapen ed egenonto. And their feelings seemed to be as if they had come to their own country. Hos e patrid hi goyato. Now, the optative occurs only after a past tense, except in this one case in Iliad 11, after a negative present. I care no more than if a witless child or a woman had struck me. This is the blank weapon of a useless man, no fighter. Uk alego, hos e me gune baloi, e pais a fron. Kopon gar belos andros an alkedos utidanoio. Iliad 11. This I included. It's an example from Pindar. The clause with hos hote, hos hopote generally precedes the main clause, and hos hote occurs without appreciable difference from hos in this Pindar passage. Euripele as a sure pledge, having given to the son of Oikles as wife. Eripulain, horkion hos hotepiston, dontes, oikleda gunaika. And then a relative pronoun referring to a substantive accompanied by hos, hoste, as, meaning as, often takes the subjunctive without on. Thus, he dropped then to the ground in the dust, like some black poplar, which in the low-lying ground about a great marsh grows, smooth trimmed, yet with branches growing at the uppermost tree. I mean, what's amazing is how expansive these similes are. I mean, here, like some black poplar tree, which grows in the low-lying great marsh, smooth trimmed, yet with branches growing at the uppermost treetop. So did he drop into the ground, into the dust. Just amazing. Although there's some slight, doesn't quite fit here because he falls into the dust, whereas a tree grows in a marsh, which is hardly dry, but nevertheless. Now, this is my favorite of all the similes in the Iliad. This is where Menelaus is shot by the archer Pandarus, and the poet addresses Menelaus directly after he's been wounded. So it goes, "Nor were the gods forgetful of you, O Menelaus, the immortal ones. For the first daughter of Zeus, the spoiler, she, standing before you, warded off the sharp missile. She likewise repelled, as when a mother repels from her child a fly, when she lies in deep sleep. Athena did so drive to the spot where the hodes of the belt golden fashioned, and the two-ply breastplate overlapped." I believe I tried to translate this a bit too literally, but nevertheless, it's a wonderful metaphor where this arrow has been sent to Menelaus, and Athena, strikes it off of its mark, and he compares it to a mother who swats a fly away from her sleeping child. It's an incredibly tender simile. So, uden seten menela et oi makares lelathonto athanatoi, prote de dios dugatea agelee, he toi prostestason velosake piuke samunen. He detoson men ergen, apokros hos hotemeter, paidos erge muian, hot de I lexetai hupnoi. Aute daut I tunen hoti zosteros oges cruceoi, sunekon kai diploos ein teto thorex. So, neither were the gods, the blessed ones, forgetful of you, O Menelaus, the immortals. But first off, the daughter of Zeus, the spoiler, she, standing before you, warded off the sharp barb. And she, just in the same way, kept it off of your flesh, as when a mother keeps off a fly when that child lays in sweet sleep. So did she drive the arrow to where the hodes of the belt, golden, came together, and where the two-sided breastplate attached itself, overlapped. So the idea is that she drove it from being able to enter directly into his flesh into, rather, the equipment, the part of his protective gear that could most hold up to an arrow. And it's a wonderful scene because it ends up staining, it does clip his skin, so he does bleed. And there's another wonderful simile of, the blood going down his garment, and it's compared with someone who's dyeing fabric. It's just amazing when we get into these more Baroque, for lack of a better word, portions of the Iliadic tradition, how wonderfully sophisticated these and elegant these similes become. So this presentation was just meant to give you a sense of the moods, the way they get used in these various comparisons and similes. These things pretty much translate themselves, or, there's not a lot of real issues. It's just a matter of how the poet wants to represent what's happening, whether with the indicative of hardcore reality, or of the softened futurity of the subjunctive, or even with the optative. Okay, so there we have it. I'll see you again soon, as we now have only to continue our way through the Iliad, Book 1 itself, since this pretty much completes our grammatical exposition. Okay, I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.